Welcome to Following on India. I'm Jarrod. Kimber. With me is Saurabh, Somani. We're on the YouTube page of talkSPORT Cricket over here as well. Okay, we got about 12 balls. And on a normal day, I would have just messaged the group, Saurabh, and just been like, there's nothing to talk about. But weirdly enough, there is actually quite a few things to talk about. Like if it rains on Monday or Tuesday, we might have nothing. But right at the moment, we do actually have quite a couple, well, not quite a few, but more than one thing to talk about. Let's start with this. Rohit Sharma won the toss and he decided to bowl. Now, this is obviously following on India, but I should have put a trigger warning there for all England fans from November 7th, 2002, just in case. But what were your thoughts?
I thought it was quite a reasonable decision, actually. No, I mean, look at the way it was overcast, the way rain was forecast. We didn't know that there'll be so much rain, of course. Nobody could have predicted how much rain there would be. But on a day when you think the skies are going to be cloudy, it's going to rain on and off, I think you'd rather be bowling. And also, if you are bowling with frequent rain stops, it means potentially more overs for Jasprit Bumrah. Because he gets a lot of rest between, it might be the same spell technically, but he'll get a lot of rest in between. So I think it was a reasonable call, especially with the way the conditions were. And also, I think, some 6 or 7 of the last tests in the Gabba have been won by the side bowling first. And the one that was lost was Australia lost by 8 runs in the Shamar Joseph match.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I thought it was reasonable. What did you make of it, Jarrod?
Yeah, I think in general, because of what happened with Nasser Hussain in 2002, and
yeah.
It's kind of become this bigger thing than it needs to. We bowl first a lot more in Test cricket now than we ever have before. And I don't mean of recent times, but in the last 40 years, up until the 1970s, you just automatically batted first no matter what the wicket was right? And there are a lot of people who grew up in that era who won't understand that cricket has changed and that you need to move on. So I think it was Rishabh Pant who was talking to, might have been David Warner or someone else, and said when he walked on the surface, his spikes went straight in. And I think if you were on the fence about whether you were going to bowl first or not, I think if your spikes go into the wicket at the Gabba, you probably think to yourself, this might be the best day. And I've done the numbers too. The only thing I would say is that teams generally bowl first at the Gabba, but it's actually just as good to bowl on day 2 as it is. It's actually better to bowl on day 2 than it is on day 1. But in Australia, first 30 overs of a test match, the Gabba is by far the best place to bowl of all the Australian wickets. Right. And not by a little bit either. I think it averages 26 or 27 runs per wicket. And I think Adelaide's at 32 or 33. There's a big difference to second. Right.
Oh.
So if you're going to do it anywhere, do it there. But there is the ghosts of Nasser Hussain's past and everything floating around you. Right. I don't think you can get away from that. Also, the big problem is that I'd be really interested to know your theories on this. When you win the toss and you bat first, if you fail, let's say you get bowled out for 200. Everyone goes, well, you did the honourable thing. You went out there and you tried to bat and you didn't do it very well. And then the narrative moves on because the other team bats on the same day, right? If you win the toss and you bowl first and it goes horribly wrong, the other team might be batting for 4.5 sessions, right? And so the narrative never moves on. And so I think there's a lot of it comes down to those sorts of things. And so we end up in this sort of feedback cycle where it's like, yeah, maybe it was the wrong decision, but maybe it was just that, Andy Caddick and Matthew Hoggard and Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Siraj didn't bowl particularly well. If you can make the right decision as a captain to bat first, right? Go out there. It's a good pitch. You were right to do it. And your opener nicks off the third slip first ball and your number 3 comes out and leaves the second one. It looks like a terrible decision, right? And so I think we factor a lot of those things in. But when it comes down to it, I don't think the decision was wrong. But I do think that first spell of bowling by those two guys was not ideal.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say just that the decision was okay. The bowling perhaps wasn't. I think we spoke about it in an earlier podcast that Jasprit Bumrah is allowed to have off days. But it still feels like, there's something not quite right with the universe when he has an off day. So that's what it felt like. I don't know what happened. In Perth, India were attacking the stumps a lot more, and suddenly in Adelaide and Brisbane, they have. Now, I also just wanted to harp on this a little bit. They show a lot of these stats of how many of those balls would have hit the stumps. But the thing is, you're not bowling only to hit at the stumps. You're bowling in the channel also. Those balls are not counted as hitting the stumps, but you want to bowl there. You want to draw the nick or whatever. So. I don't know. I'm not going just by that only one ball in India's first 5-6 overs would have hit the stumps, but it did feel like they were allowed to leave more comfortably than they should have. So I think that bit didn't go to plan for India, but you can't fault the decision to bowl first just because the bowlers didn't put it in the good areas.
I think what's interesting is that the whole stumps thing, it is worth saying that like they'll put stuff up there and go, only one ball out of so many have hit the stumps. But it's like, there actually aren't that many cricket balls that hit the stumps. The stumps are really small. I think is it in Nathan Lehman and Ben Joseph's book where they talk about that people don't understand how small the stumps are. Like when you look at it, they're really tiny and you have to really pitch the ball up to hit them. Where I think they went wrong was when Siraj bowled full, suddenly he looked like a completely different bowler. And he got a lot more movement and looked a lot more dangerous. So clearly, he should have been bowling fuller earlier. I think that's probably fair to say. And with Jasprit Bumrah, I did some research the other day. When he bowls the left-handers, he basically bowls... Someone on my YouTube page said, fourth bail, right? So he bowls about 2 or 3 inches above the top of off stump all the time, right? So it's an incredible line to bowl to left-handers. And what it does is it keeps caught behind and slips in play. But if the ball keeps a little bit low or anything else, he gets a boulder and LBW as well.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't doing that. He was a lot wider. And at the moment, it's funny, they don't really seem to have very strong plans to Usman Khawaja or to McSweeney, right, that involve keeping the stumps in play. And it was the same with Marnus in Adelaide, right? They're not... So people are saying, you should be bowling at the stumps. But they're going, no, we're trying to nick Usman Khawaja off, right? So we're going to bowl a little bit wider to him. With Nathan McSweeney, again, they're trying to be just outside off stump, right? They would have done their research on it. And then everyone says, you should bowl at the stumps more. And they're like, but we're bowling the way that we should be bowling to this player. There's no perfect answer. I still think they were a little bit short. But you know what I mean? Like, we nitpick over these things. Whereas actually, like... they probably bowl well enough to get 1 wicket. And if they were 40 for 1, would this be a better decision? Yeah, that would be par, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Siraj, he shouldn't have bowled. I mean, he tried one short one that Khwaja pulled quite imperiously. I don't know why he tried another one after that. That was the only, genuinely, moment of, why, because it's... Maybe they thought it's the Gabba bounce or something is still there, but they should have sussed that it is not actually. So the ball was just sitting up to be hit. And like you said, Siraj looked really good when he was pitching it up and, the ball was moving around a little bit also. It could have been actually, 40 for 1 would have been par. It could have been 30 for 2 also if that first half hour had gone a bit differently before the first bit of rain came.
I thought they bowled good in the second section, didn't you? I thought they bowled really well in that section.
Yes. They probably went back and just, reassessed and thought that, Which brings me to the thing we were discussing before the test, the third seamer. How did you think Akashdeep went?
I thought he looked like the best of the three of them today. I was a bit surprised they didn't give him the new ball, just because he's a natural swing bowler, and I just would have thought... it's not like you're demoting Mohammad Siraj. What you're saying to Siraj is, look, it might not swing that long. Let's just see if we can give the swing bowler the new ball. Because he's a swing bowler, he pitched it up more, and this looked like a pitch that was more dangerous. I thought he bowled really well. I thought he was really unlucky not to get a wicket.
Yeah. I was also quite... but I did think that he wouldn't be, out of place in the test side. So I think I had more of a buy on the third seamer than you did, because I thought Akashdeep can, keep it there. He can be consistent. You're right. He bowled. He looked like the best seamer in the brief, whatever, what did we have? 13 overs, 14 overs, something.
We might speak for longer than there was actual cricket on this. We'll have to be careful to make sure that we don't. No, I mean my question with him was never going to be if he got the ball on a early morning in the Gabba, if he was going to have a problem.
Right.
My problem with him as specifically is how he bowls throughout the innings and when the ball gets flatter and everything else. But
Yeah.
I thought he was really, really good, and I think they missed a trick not giving him the new ball. What about the other selection decision of Ravi Jadeja? So is it possible we could get Kuldeep Yadav to fly in for the 4th test and Akshar Patel for the 5th
For
test?
the 5th.
Can we have 5 different spinners for India in every test match, Saurabh?
It's spinner's roulette. Like each one goes 1-1-1. So I can understand the Washington selection for the first test. I think we talked about it on this channel itself, that they were a little uncertain about their batting. Nitish was unproven. Washington was the spinner with the best batting ability, recent form wise, plus recent bowling form also. He had better than Ashwin and Jadeja in the New Zealand series at home. So they went with Washington. I think because of Nitish's batting, they thought they might just get the better bowler. Plus, Ashwin has a really good record at Adelaide. Last 2 times India has gone to Adelaide, he has bowled really well. So it again made sense to get Ashwin. So why Jadeja for this one? I don't know, apart from the fact that, Jadeja was anyway actually the default first choice spinner in overseas tests for India. Especially in the what you call the Sena countries, the South Africa, England, New Zealand and Australia. He was always the default first choice. He, batting pedigree wise, obviously he has, I guess, higher than the other two, even though the other two are also really good. He has a higher batting pedigree. He brings the left-handedness, and other than that, I don't know. And maybe they just wanted a bowler who can keep it tight for long periods. I don't know. Did you think of some deeper reasons?
I don't know. I mean, nothing you've said there is unrealistic, right? Like, I think everything you've said makes sense. The only things I would add is the Gabba has bounce. Like Nathan Lyon does very well at the Gabba. So that is the place you'd probably prefer one of the 2 taller spinners. So I thought that was a bit interesting. I think it also probably says something about their batting lineup, right? Where they know Ashwin can give a bit of batting. They know Washington might eventually be that level of batter. But at the moment, maybe they just feel more safe with Jadeja in that batting lineup and giving themselves a little bit more backup. And maybe they're not as worried about the Australian left-handers going nuts now. Now that Head has attacked Ashwin, they're like, well, if he's going to attack Ashwin, he might as well just attack Jadeja and do you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's the way they're looking at it. But I thought it was really interesting. Other than the fact that it's funny that, they're going to have a different spinner for every test match, I just thought it was a really interesting thing of how they came about it. What about Australia's selection decision? So Scott Boland is out, Josh Hazlewood is in.
Pat Cummins said it yesterday, I think, at his pre-match presser, that was going to be the 11. So it was sort of expected. It was not unexpected, right, that Boland would sit out for Hazlewood. But if I was an Indian batsman, I would be happy not to be facing Boland. I would be happier facing
on this wicket?
Nathan Lyon than Boland on this wicket.
I'd be happier facing Nathan Lyon or Mitchell Starc on this wicket than Scott Boland.
Right. I mean, I'm assuming that Mitchell Starc is not going to be dropped. So given that,
but you know what I mean, though. Like, you look at this pitch and you do think to yourself, okay, well, Scott Boland should be a very, very dangerous bowler on this pitch, and will probably, you would think will find the length a little bit quicker than everyone else because he's bowled on the wicket a little bit more. And I'm not saying they're wrong. Again, I understand it, and we both said this is what would happen. Neither of us are surprised he's dropped, but you do look at the conditions sometimes and you go, is this the time to not have a Scott Boland in your side? But, especially if it's going to be a shorter game, right? And if there is going to be rain on day 1, perhaps rain on day 4 and rain on day 5, you would think that is the perfect game that you don't need to risk having a spinner in. And
I thought of Scott Boland, weirdly enough, when India were bowling, because I was just remembering his Adelaide spell and how he kept that, nagging off-stump line and how he made the batsman play or be in 2 minds while leaving, which India couldn't get the radar quite right in the first 25 minutes of play. So it just brought me back to Scott Boland, and I was like, well, good thing Scott Boland is not here from India's point of view.
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay, let's go forward to tomorrow. We've seen almost no cricket today. India, according to some bookmakers, are completely out of this game already. And I'm like, they're like 3 wickets in 15 minutes away from big favourites here, everyone. Like, we need to chill out a little bit. Obviously, the draw now plays a bigger part. So I suppose my question is, we both believe that India could easily take wickets again tomorrow, especially, everything that we've seen so far. But my bigger question really is, will either of these teams force a result? Or if they get to a point where they think to themselves, this game's going, let's just play the series forward. Because, we've seen India of recent times force results. We've obviously seen England become, used to that. Australia, less so. Australia were happy to play draws at times. Do you think, though, this is a test match where India or Australia will try and force a result in order, and by that I mean risking a loss? So I don't mean trying to force a result when you're on top, because obviously both teams will try and do that. But if there is an actual chance of
like a risky declaration or something.
Yeah, like a risky declaration or slogging in the second or third innings or whatever it may be. Do you think we will see that in like the like India versus Bangladesh test?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think India could do it against Bangladesh because they were clearly the superior team. They were at home. They had that much of a difference in quality between them and their opponents that they could do that, because they knew that if things start going wrong, they have the wherewithal to sort of pull back and still retrench and play a sort of defensive game and be safe. There's no way they'll think that about this Australian team in Australia at the Gabba. So I don't think India would do that. Personally, the only reason to do that would be WTC points, but I think the WTC final is kind of out of reach of India, and it's not out of Australia's reach. They have to play Sri Lanka away, which it could turn out to be actually quite tough, with the way their new Jayasuriya is bowling. But I think they'll feel more confident about winning this series at home, and at least not getting whitewashed in Sri Lanka. So they also don't need to risk doing that. So I don't see any percentage for any of the teams in trying to force a result. So I don't think they will.
No, I'm with you. I think that's probably most likely. I can't imagine either of the teams are going to go absolutely crazy. Perhaps Australia might look at it and go, wow, if we need 4 wins for the World Test Championship, they might think about it separately from that point of view. And I'm not saying that either team is going to shut up for a draw either. I just don't think there will be any riskiness involved. Yeah. Anyway, that is Saurabh Somani. I'm Jarrod Kimber. This is Following on India. We'll be back on talkSPORT's cricket channel on YouTube again tomorrow. Hopefully, with slightly more cricket.